Hey guys, Craig here, Fergie Time, episode 11. Today I am chatting with Tara, who besides has an awesome Jeep, does a ton of photography. She works on tons of cars. She's just got a new Scout she's working on. She's working on a Camaro. She's got her Jeep. She's got her own marketing firm. She works for a big marketing firm, does a lot of photography. She just does it all. So check it out. Hope you like it. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hey guys, Craig here, Fergie Time, and today for episode 12, I am with Tara, aka
RoveandReverie. Close.
I'll put a link down below, and yeah, I'm just excited to chat with Tara. I've been following your journey on the gram and doing Jeep photography and off-road stuff for a long time, and now it's just cool to get you in. And yeah, just I don't know, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing. And I know we talked a little bit before about your 80-hour work week and all that, so
that's not something to brag about. Gosh, am I supposed to know what I'm doing? I feel like I'm just kind of winging it every day right now. So the account that most everybody knows is RoveandReverie, which is the one that I started with the Jeep years ago, which has now turned into more than the Jeep, because like I always kind of tell people, I started with a Jeep. I'm not necessarily a Jeep girl. I'm a car girl. All of them are welcome, other than a few select ones that I'm not a fan of. But overall, you're going to see a lot more vehicles on that account, especially over the next year or two. Right now, I'm up to 3. I can't fit any more in the garage for now. We're at 3 till I get a bigger garage. But yeah, so that account was primarily the one where everybody was seeing outdoor adventures, overland adventures. I've been a travel and outdoor and motorsport photographer for 17 years. So that kind of just all played nicely together. And that account kind of just became the place that everybody was following along with everything I was doing there. And I started sharing a lot more educational and informational stuff on it over the years, because especially for the ladies in this industry, we are still few and far between in certain ways as far as educational content and really trying to teach people what they need to know to be out here doing it by themselves. That's primarily what I guess I became known for first, was doing it myself and solo or with the kids. So I wanted other women to not be scared of doing that either, because it's not that hard. So putting it out there all the time was the best way for me to kind of encourage everybody else to do it.
You do a lot of stuff to your Jeep, like almost, I think you were doing an axle swap on.
That's a responsibility thing for me. So I travel alone with my kids, and granted they're older now, but they were not always. I just couldn't justify being out there doing what I was doing without also knowing how to fix it. If I broke it out there, I can't put myself in a situation with my kids where I can't take care of them or the vehicle. I think people always mistakenly think that doing mechanical work is my favorite thing. Tis not. Someday when I win the lottery, I will pay somebody to do all of the work on all my vehicles. It's just kind of a necessity, because to me there's just a responsibility factor there that goes along with doing that alone. I do get a lot of crap from people about doing it alone, but that is why I like doing it. It is my escape. So I will continue to do it alone, but responsibly and always with extra parts in the Jeep with me.
How'd you learn how to do all that?
Majority self-taught through mistakes. It's kind of a trial and error thing. The great thing about vehicles, Jeeps are a great starter vehicle for people with this, because they are not that complicated. For the most part, once you start taking it apart, putting it back together, best way to learn is to take it apart and put it back together. Sometimes you have some extra parts, but the great thing with Jeeps is you don't always need all the extra parts. And then I was very, very lucky to have a few mentors along the way that were incredible builders that never minded my stupid questions or millions of questions that I would come to them with. Little bit of guidance and a whole lot of trial and error.
And some YouTube thrown in there, I'm sure.
YouTube's dangerous. I kind of try to tell people to stay away from that, because unless it's somebody you know on YouTube, here's the thing about the internet, people can say whatever they want and then just say it's true. So there's a lot of bad mechanical advice on YouTube, which again, trial and error. But yeah, so just take that with a grain of salt and always double check. A Haynes manual is a wonderful thing. I am a diagrams girl all day long, so just buy the Haynes manual and double check that all the things are where they belong. Just take it apart and put it back together.
So you said you've been off-road photography for like 17 years. How long you been in marketing?
Those two things have kind of always gone hand in hand. In my younger days, when I did not mind abusing my body so much, it was primary photography and videography. But as I've gotten older, I kind of didn't want to torture myself to the same extent. So it was kind of a natural transition to kind of move more over to the marketing side of it. But I was working over the years with all sorts of agencies, marketing firms, magazines. So it was always a part of it. It just wasn't primarily what I was doing. So it was kind of a natural progression there for me deciding I didn't want to be beating up my body every weekend all the time, and kind of switched over to that. Over the last 4 years has been the major marketing switch.
So how do you balance like running your own agency, working for a company, off-roading, working on projects?
I don't. It's like, okay, so I'm one of those people that is a firm believer that balance is rarely attainable, especially if you are doing something you're passionate about and something that means something to you. Balance is rarely a factor. It's more about knowing how to compartmentalize more than anything, because I don't think the balance is ever going to be there. I've tried that. I've tried playing that game of like, oh, balance means you're successful, balance means you're happy and healthy. Most of the fun I've had in my life is when life was most out of balance. Most of the success I've had in my life has been when life has been most out of balance. So for me, it's more about knowing and learning how to properly handle everything always being out of balance, because it's just never going to be perfect, and sometimes you just got to go with it.
What got you into off-roading?
I kind of genetically blame my dad for the car girl factor. I was raised on muscle cars and Harleys. That was kind of always there. The off-road factor didn't really happen until adulthood, and that came along more with it was a complementary thing to what I was already doing. I was doing a lot of travel photography and hiking 20 miles a day and doing pretty extreme things. I had one shoot that we had to do that just took 3 days of climbing Rainier. It was kind of naturally fell into it. It became much easier to do what I was doing work-wise with an off-road vehicle instead of, I kind of joke that the Jeep made me lazy because I don't hike 20 miles a day anymore. I just drive the Jeep there, but you know, it fit. And then it was kind of just snowballed from there, which, as everybody who has a Jeep knows, we all say we're keeping it stock, and that never happens.
So you didn't really get into off-roading for off-roading. You did it to help with your job.
Oh, it's a facilitator. It's a facilitator to me. I'm an astrophotographer, and I love being out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like hundreds of miles away from the next closest human makes me the happiest in the entire world. You can't do that without a fairly decently built vehicle. So it's definitely a facilitator. I happen to also love cars, so that kind of went hand in hand with it and made it easier. It was definitely a facilitator for what I love doing and every other sport and activity we do.
You're sitting in front of a Yellow Scout. You mentioned a Camaro, and then the Jeep.
It's a Camaro too. Yeah.
So those are your three.
Three for right now. There's room for one more. I just got to clear the garage out.
What's your daily then?
All of them.
So the Scout is fully functional and everything. It's
Scout
beautiful.
Needs more work. The Scout is, with a couple weeks of work, is totally drivable. Yeah, it's a diesel, so like, you know, hard to kill those things, but that one's gonna be a little bit more of a project. It's planned to be a show vehicle next year for a few different companies, so I have some work to do making it. It's mostly cosmetic. It's great. The bones are great on it, no rust, so it's basically just a lot of cosmetic work for me to do on it, and then just some basic engine maintenance. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty set to go. It's solid.
What year is that?
77.
Well, I saw your post saying you're gonna.
Like they make
what's it gonna be?
And so I've gone back and forth on this. I think we're gonna do it in stages, because I think there's part of me that for like a year I want to enjoy it. As like I'll probably leave it on its leaf springs. It's already got axles redone on it, so it doesn't need that. So I think phase one's gonna be leave it on its 35s and overland it and make it pretty for shows for the year, because turning it into a crawler the way I want, I would like to frame swap it with a JK frame and then get it up to 40s, but that requires so much metal cutting that I just don't know if I want to jump into that yet. So I think it's going to be in phases, but I think first year phase of it, I think we're going to make it an overlander first and then just take it from there, because what I really want to do to it requires a whole frame swap, and that's just a whole nother level of project. So I'm going to enjoy it kind of as is for a little while. I kind of always joke that all of my vehicles have backstories to them. Like, I don't think I ever just like picked up a vehicle for no reason ever in my life. I always get very attached. I get badly attached to them. I'd say for about 8 years. It's just sometimes when you get it stuck in your head that you want something, but I knew I wanted a 70s diesel Scout. They're rare. They're hard to find with the diesel, but I knew that's what I wanted. And for some reason, I've always had the yellow in my head. Not my favorite color, but I think it looks great on a vehicle. So in certain forms. It was actually last September. I was at Teton Overland Show with a group of people, and I think if we're just sitting around the fire basically talking about what's your dream vehicle, and I mentioned that one of like 8 years, it's been the one that like that would be the net. If I could build anything, that would be it. My friend Don was sitting there at the campfire kind of like, and he kind of just laughed a little. He's like, and he pulled his phone out and he's like, you mean like this one? And he had it like sitting in his barn down a couple hours south of me here. and like just he pulled this out, and it was literally the exact vehicle that I'd had in my head for the last 8 years that I knew I wanted to build. Obviously it's in project form because he had started working on it. Yeah, it kind of just happened in that way. So since September, like, yeah, that's when I found out it existed. It's just now coming home to me. But yeah, it was kind of
that is cool.
Funny little the campfire stories. It's like I have one of those.
Yeah. So what's some of the biggest challenges you face with like a project car?
The budget. I think that's always the challenge for me is obviously I'm a single mom, so budget is always going to my kids and the vehicles are kind of my kids, but secondary. So it's always me finding creative ways to put projects together where obviously I get some of them sponsored or I work with companies and things like that. But the budget when you're working with these things, it's always cost 3 times more than you planned. Like, that with Jeeps too. Like, you can set your plan in place and then it's like make the plan and then there is no plan and things go like once you start, cutting into things and doing things, then you need something else to go along with that, modification you've made. So it's definitely always like a budget thing for me of like, I have no patience. And so I always want to do it all at once. And with projects, especially like this one, it's a lot more time consuming and you have to be a lot more patient because it's just not something you can't just run out and grab a part for it. It's a little bit different. So it's a good exercise in patience for me because I have none.
So you mentioned being a single mom. How do you juggle like all that together?
So it comes back to that balance thing of like there is no balance, but I have amazing kids who are extremely independent and self-reliant and definitely will always, I don't know, we're a little bit of a team over here. We always have been. So like they were raised that way. So I guess they don't know any different, but there's not a lot of balance. I think like because my hobby is, the vehicles are part of my hobby that I love doing. So it's not like I'm, that is where if I have free time, where it's spent. And then same thing with the kids I always try to, as much as they want to be involved. Because I think there's a lot of people out there, especially when their kids are little, they're like, oh, my kid's going to love this because I love it. You're going to get a kid that doesn't love it. Like at some point, or they're going to go through a phase. Because I think both of mine have gone through phases of like, I'm so over this and I want nothing to do with it. And then they come back around, but like, teenagers. So trying to involve them as much as possible and let them make a lot of the decisions, even when we go on trips, like we'll do a 2 or 3 month trip, they're making decisions just as much as I am on what we're doing so that they actually have some responsibility in it and actually feel like they aren't getting dragged along for the ride on something their mom is doing. And then there's obviously like my oldest, he definitely could care less. He doesn't care about driving. He's just it's just like there's this weird, the generation of 18-year-olds right now that just don't care about driving. It's too expensive.
I know hobbies outside of photography or off-roading or that you have time for? I think
it all goes together. Music is still always a thing for me. Like that's just part of life always. I don't know. People always ask me that and I'm like, is the off-roading and the outdoors and the amount of trouble I already get into not enough? I feel like I have enough expensive hobbies. I need to find a cheaper one, but
you started as a photographer, you got a Jeep and you started taking more pictures of your Jeep, and I'm sure you met some interesting people along the way of your journey. What do you think about just the whole off-road community, your part in it?
The best part about off-road and Jeep community especially is if you look at if I sit down and think about the people that I never would have met otherwise, some of the people are the most important people even in my daily life right now and closest friends, I would not have met them if not for having that one thing in common, because I have never seen a wider variety of people with different life experiences brought together more than what you see in the Jeep or off-road community. Like we all come from entirely different backgrounds, entirely different reasons for buying that vehicle or doing what we're doing. You wouldn't meet those people otherwise in life. Like you wouldn't run into them because you don't have other things in common, but that's the best part of it. It gives you such a variety of people and experiences that that you get. I love that part of it personally. I think about how many people I just never would have known otherwise if it wasn't for that. But that works both ways, right? I think that I work in the industry and I think that's a little bit of a different level to it there. Motorsports in general is an ego-driven industry. It's not there for some kind of necessity. It is generally built on ego-based activities. It's racing. It's, it's very competitive and it's a very ego-based thing. It's about people building the biggest, making the best, things like that. And I think people just generally, when they complain about it, I try to remind them of that, of like, we're not in an industry that any of this exists because it's a necessity. It's something we love and it's something people are passionate about, and there are generally egos and personalities involved because of that. That's a good thing and a bad thing. Like you have to take the bad with the good there. But I have never been in an industry that is more competitive or full of more bullies it just kind of goes hand in hand. I feel like that just is the nature of sports, motorsports, any of them in general. It kind of goes there with that. So not to knock it, but I just kind of always tell people and remind them, like, on the industry side of things, you just have to keep that filter in mind there and not take anything too personally, because it's always somebody else's ego. Like, or there's companies, especially in Jeep and off-road industry, where a lot of these, especially in the US, are privately owned small businesses. There is a lot of emotion and all of that tied up into the ownership of those companies, and people kind of forget there's a lot of ego, and I don't want to use the word ego all the time, but it's very personal to a lot of us. I always just try to frame it with that. If people kind of want to say, oh, this is miserable, this is horrible, this, like everybody, hates each other, whatever, that's not the case. I think it's very personal to a lot of us and what we do, and it's very tied into the rest of our life. So try to filter it that way. So there's kind of a different side. There's the hobbyist side, and then there's the industry side for me. And obviously those things are kind of always merged a little bit more than I would like. Just goes along with it,
So what advice would you give to single moms or to follow their passion, whether it be off-roading or not? Like,
don't listen to anybody on the internet, because the first thing they're going to tell you is not to do it. And fear is a liar. I think fear stops people from doing so much that they can and should be doing. But, obviously fear is there to keep us safe, but fear also gets in the way a lot. So you've just got to balance that and remember that it's okay to do things even if you're scared to do it. Just do it scared. And if you can't do it scared alone, find a really good friend. I have a few that will absolutely push you to do it even scared. Sometimes you need somebody that will push you off the cliff.
I don't want to say you were a passenger princess, but you were
more of the... I love being passenger princess for the camera.
Yeah, so you just were out there shooting and getting rides everywhere.
So, and I'll always tell people, like, for me to drive and shoot, for me, like, getting in and out of the vehicle, for me, because I'm out of it more than I'm in it. So for me, driving my own vehicle on trail runs when I'm trying to shoot for people, that's just silly. So I actually don't mind being passenger. Usually it's half passenger, half driver, because sometimes I have to drive things for people, whatever. I kind of made a joke that last Trail Hero, if you go through a trail run at Trail Hero, half the time I'm, moving vehicles up obstacles for people, so I get to drive all of the vehicles that are on. In one trail run, I think I drove 11 vehicles one time, just getting them up certain obstacles or whatever. But yes, I love being passenger princess. It's fun. But EJS, I was with the Nemesis guys, who are always a good time to go wheel with. So I already knew we were going to have some fun. So definitely passenger on that one, so I can shoot all the fun things. But yeah, it's the best part. And I don't have to break my own vehicle.
So what are some of the challenges of trying to get like that perfect shot?
The drivers. So it's one of those you have to be ready for anything kind of moments. Like hammers is my favorite to shoot, and people think that's weird, but it's because you get one chance. You don't get do-overs. So you get one chance to be ready and to get the shot for when, you have to anticipate what's going to happen. The best photographers in this industry on the off-road side of things are the ones that are drivers themselves, because they are able to anticipate what the person in that vehicle is going to do. Because usually you have no communication with whoever's driving. It's very rare. So you have to be able to anticipate what's kind of coming down the line for you and where to place yourself and how to shoot it or what you think they're going to do. That's why I love working with drivers that I know. Like Jake Versi's a good example of, I know exactly how Jake's going to behave as a driver. So when I'm shooting hammers or even on a Jeep trail with him, I know what Jake's going to do, and I can position myself ahead of time because I know he's going to have some fun with it. So I can always, position for that. Usually with off-road trails, especially for the photographers, most people don't notice, we run that trail multiple times. Like if there's a lot of vehicles, we've run it forwards and backwards with gear on for all day. So it's quite the workout.
A little backstory. I won't say who it was, but there was a Jeep who went over like a V-notch, and his wife was getting ready to take a picture, and she was actually down below, and she was gonna have the Jeep go over her, and somebody was like, no, hey, that's not a good idea. You should get out of there. And she did.
That's a never factor. Never, ever.
I was going to say, and luckily she did, because he actually went down. Yeah.
Being the mom on trail runs of I'm the one that has all the rules. But there's a reason for it. Because if you've ever seen it happen, all it takes is, it shouldn't take seeing it happen once, but if you've ever seen a bad accident like that on a trail once, my sister is a life flight nurse, by the way, and she actually has in detail described to me the primary thing that occurs on off-road trails, because she's the first one on scene for those. And she will tell you first, it's always somebody doing something like that, and it's always an amputation, and it's always, scenarios like that, because it's a vehicle. Like, it's still a 5,000 to 6,000 pound vehicle most of the time. No, we have tools for that. And if anybody's doing that for the sake of the shot, there's no reason to. You can stick a camera under there and remotely activate it. You can also, if I have a drone that angles up, that I'll fly the drone in the vehicles, because I have the one that angles upwards and I can get those shots. But never ever will you see me doing anything like that, or putting myself in that position, or allowing anybody else to. I get accused of being a stickler for the rules, but there is a reason for it. Nobody's life is worth a picture. There's
so do you have a photo you're like, man, this is it, this is my photo, I
have a lot of them. I think it's like, everybody always asks what my favorite one is, and I kind of always say the one I haven't taken yet, because that's kind of what drives photographers and artists anyways, is I'm ready for the next one. It's like I'll see my work and be like, oh, that's awesome, and I love that, and I remember the moment I took it and remember what was going on, but I'm always ready for the next one. I think if we're talking off-road work, I'll never have anything I love more than some of my Hammers shots. Like, Hammers is just a whole nother monster every year, and even just getting a dozen shots that are kind of epic out of that from being there for a week there's a new challenge there every year. So that one will always be my favorite, I think.
Favorite off-road vehicle? You
can't make me choose. That would be like making me choose a favorite food or a favorite song. Like, I hate it when people say the word favorite. I'm too ADHD to have favorite anything, by the way, but it will serve a different purpose. It's always going to probably come down to, if people tell me what is the most useful off-road vehicle, I'll tell them it's a Jeep, because it's the most versatile, honestly. I do a lot of work with a lot of off-road vehicles, but they may be a pain in the butt, but they can get you anywhere. And if we're going for nostalgia, I'm a sucker for all the old ones. Any 70s, 80s, they're so simple. They're like the Scout, there's a simplicity to it that you just can't, they don't make them like that anymore. Everything is so easy to fix, and the systems are so simple.
No, I love the old Scouts. I love the old Toyota, the Land Cruisers,
the FJs and the Cruisers. Yeah, and 80s Cruisers are
old
solid
Defenders
vehicle. I feel like people's got to tell me by category. It's like, what is your favorite one for this purpose, and what is your favorite one for this purpose? Because there's too many.
Sunrise or sunset?
I'm always up for both. So yeah, I'm an astrophotographer, so for me it's more like the middle of the night. Darkest point of the night is usually 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. So for me, that's my absolute favorite stars. If I had to choose, sunset, because then that leads into night photography stuff that I usually do.
One item you can't live without on an off-road trip?
Oh, zip ties and chapstick.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Always coffee.
Mountains or deserts?
Mountains. I moved to Colorado. I mean, we have both here technically, but...
Your go-to relaxation activity?
Is relaxing a thing? Honestly, it's camping. It's getting as far away from everybody and cell phone service as I can, and camping. It's, just away from other people.
One word to describe yourself.
That other people call me, or I don't know. That's hard. That's a hard one. The one I hear the most is I get called tenacious more than anything, and I actually used to think that was. I think for the first half of your life when you're young, it's an insult, and then when you get over 30, you're like, oh, okay. It completely changes the frame of reference for you when you get a little older. But yeah, that is what I've been called the most in my entire life.
If your life had a theme song, what song would it be?
Can it be a whole Zach Bryan album? Can it just be the whole thing, rolled into one?
Are you a Zach Bryan fan?
I am. I'm also a classical music nerd, so I guess you could throw mix up Gershwin and Zach Bryan. That's a very weird mix, but yeah, it'd be one of those.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for hanging out. It was fun.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Hopefully you got something out of that. I know I definitely learned some stuff, and I can't wait to see that Scout when it's finished and she starts hitting the shows with it. Yeah, subscribe. Let me know if there's someone else you want me to chat with, and I appreciate you guys. Thanks.